everyone, and welcome to MBA Banter with Madhu, Erons, and Himanshu.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4. So, today we've got a very special guest with us, our classmate and dear friend Sahil. And Sahil, thank you so much for being a guest on this episode where we're going to dive into some topics that are of interest to you. So, starting off with, Sal, why don't you give the audience a little introduction about who you are and how you know us?
Hi everyone, thank you for having me, and I've followed your podcast very avidly, and I hope it is one of many more to come. Thank you very much. I would like to say that I'm a bit disappointed I'm not the first MBA member on it. However, Talia can win, it's fine, no problems. I'm here for the greater good and here to come back if you wish for me to be back. But anyway, preliminaries out the way. I am Sahil Doshi. I was on the same MBA batch as the three of you, and I'm actually originally from London. I schooled in London, worked in London before the MBA. Originally, ancestrally, I'm from India, and I've got lots of family in Kenya, so I've got a bit of a tri-cultural background, which a lot of people found quite rare or odd initially, which was quite funny, but we can maybe divulge more into that later. And yeah, more than happy to discuss anything you'd like to cover. And just as a caveat, I might be a bit biased because I love the MBA.
Ooh, okay then, great. Himanshu, I'm going to hand it over to you to take us through, well, the last question that you left us with in episode 3. So go on.
Thank you, Madhu. Welcome to the show, Sahil. It's indeed great to have you with us here. So, Sahil, the last question on which we paused the last episode was that we have observed over the last 2 or 3 decades that there have been few countries like such as the US, UK, Australia, and Canada who have been consistent in pulling candidates for their postgraduate as well as undergraduate courses now from all across the world. And these 4 countries, they are like the very much the pillars of the Western education model. And it's a coincidence or it is not, that is beyond the remit of this episode, but these countries have also been the torch bearers as far as the democratic ideals are concerned, or fostering innovation is concerned, or a wider outlook towards life in terms of tolerance, in terms of humanity, in terms of justice. So a thought which came into our mind while we were discussing things with Thalia was that is this a result of the so-called Western education system, that all the good things which I've talked about, of all the principles of life and the virtues of democracy, is it a coincidence that it's a result of Western education system, or there's something else to consider? Can you please, because you have been almost brought up in England and you have spent.
I'm just checking. Is sorry to cut you off. Is this a PhD podcast or MBA podcast?
Because it sounds like a full thesis can be written.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm qualified enough to answer that.
No, you are qualified enough to answer. Why? Because you have a very rare background kind of thing. You have an Indian background. You have something with Kenya, the Africa touch is there, and then you have the UK touch. I mean,
100%. I mean, when we had our introductions, when we went around the room and everything, and I was like, I spoke like this, so everyone was already shocked because I didn't look like I would speak like this. And then I mentioned I'm got Kenyan family and I go there so often, and people were even more confused because unfortunately or fortunately, whatever, some people just hadn't had exposure to certain migrations that have happened, and therefore they're thinking, how are you from Kenya and how do you speak like this? So it was quite fun. And it was good to break those stereotypes and boundaries, and I wouldn't say stereotypes, just maybe lack of exposure that some people have had. And actually, Himanshu, your question is very relevant, also partly politically at the moment, which is why I don't want to go into it too much because I don't want to talk about politics. Again, it's an MBA podcast, and I think actually there's a bit of a shift in education systems because you're right. I do think there was a big kind of Western influence on being the torch bearers over certain decades in the recent history. However, because of cost and also because of technology, I do think that's shifting, because at the moment, the education systems and higher education systems in the UK are actually struggling, or struggling more than ever, to attract international students because of the cost implication and of the uni, and also the cost of living in the UK, whereby there are unis in other parts of the world where, yeah, they don't have the incredible heritage and history of the unis of UK and US, etc. However, they have a lot more clout with getting teachers there, or getting more infrastructure there, and more modern infrastructure. So it's actually an interesting time in the education space, and therefore I don't want to talk about it too much, because we could talk about it for 2 hours. However, I do feel that there is still a great element and pride of the UK and education system. There is obviously that heritage that I mentioned. There's a lot of, in some ways, lineage with some people, where like generations go to the same uni or the same kind of foundation of uni, and I don't think that will go away. And I think maybe with my background, it was quite nice to explore that more, because the British side of me has that sentimental connection to these unis, and then the other sides of me felt way more able to connect with the incredibly diverse group we had. So, you know, I think there was 1 in 3 people from different backgrounds in our cohort, which was incredible.
Yeah.
And I even mentioned that in my interview, actually, how I really feel like I'll be able to connect with more people than the average, because of just having the benefit and, I guess, luck of the different backgrounds I come from. So I do feel that helped. And I do feel, because of the UK institutions, etc., that I've mentioned, it does really encourage and motivate people to come here. Because Himanshu, I remember in our lovely Term 1 syndicate, which had many ebbs and flows, probably more with you and I.
That's what we need to know about. Tell us that.
You need 3 hours. I remember one of the biggest motivators for you, Himanshu, even though you've done an MBA in India, was to explore, what was the word you said? Your cerebral stimulation or something like that. Because you wanted to explore learning around different cultures and different diversities, and the UK unis do still provide a huge amount of that. So I don't know if that answers your question in any way, but as long as your question was, my answer was double long, so sorry.
No. Absolutely fine. Like, one question I have, which you gave me a food for thought. So, do you think that the kind of status with these 4 countries which I mentioned, they do enjoy because of their, of course, I will say, a superior educational system, superior educational institutions?
I don't like that word superior, because it's very subjective, and I feel if I say superior, that means nothing compared to another person whose definition of superior could be totally different. I think, like I said, now I do feel the world is just more of a level playing field because of technology. I do feel you can Google at the tip of your fingertips stuff that you couldn't, and therefore gain information that you would have had to look for a whole day for 15-20 years ago. So I think now it's more, and as ever, I think it's more just what fits the candidate and what fits what you want. So for example, Himanshu, you wanted diversity in your cohort and learning with that, and now it's so easy for you to find where to get that. You get your phone out and you type in most diverse unis or whatever, and someone might want the opposite, who wants no diversity for whatever reason, and there's nothing wrong with that, and therefore for them a Warwick experience is not superior. So I think now it's very just, person specific. Now everything is recognized as long as it's relevant.
Perfect.
So
that was great. Thank you. Yes,
I have something for you. So you brought out an interesting point that Himanshu and you were co-workers or colleagues in Term 1.
Don't remind me on it. Please remind me.
So, in terms of, we've discussed about how the obviously Warwick Business School, this MBA did give us that aspect of experiencing true diversity. As you said, 1 out of 3, people were from a different nationality. So, in terms of conflicts or how you actually were able to assimilate well with your working groups, and not just your first syndicate. We've had permutations and combinations of different work groups at every point from September 22 to September 23,
I think
which
the
ended
question
with the
is,
dissertation.
I
So,
think the thing is, who did you not work with, right? Like the amount of different people they got us to work with.
right. That's true. That is so true.
Yeah.
So it started off with a work group which we were just, sort of thrust into, and it ended with a work group of our choice.
Yeah.
So what was your journey in terms of managing working with different people? And then, of course, like we all could dive in and give our thoughts, but we'll start with you, Saahil.
Now you're going to get me in trouble because you're basically asking me how did I select the 3 people I worked with.
I
2
selected
people.
my 3 too. So what Erons did as well. So yeah.
Now I think I that's a separate question because I was more just we worked really well together in term 2. Our syndicate kind of just naturally happened with our SCP, which for the viewers who wouldn't know is our team who we worked with our dissertation on. So there's a team of 3 of us. You get to select that if you wish to, and yeah, that kind of actually it's a good story actually because yeah, there was a journey where in term 1 you're just put with people, no one knows anyone, and you're just on induction day or put on a table with random people, and lo and behold, you're actually working with those people for the next 8 weeks of your life. So, and you're not told that when you're on that table. So,
Yeah.
you're kind of just guessing why you've been put on that table. So, it's very, very interesting because you're all in the same position on day 1. And I think at that point, there's an element of everyone having their pretty face on, and an element of people being
Which
trying to.
pretty face did you put on?
I have many.
You want to show the pouting one?
No, the pouting one never leaves. That comes an add-on to all of them. So no, I think there's an element of that naturally because everyone's trying to get to know each other, and obviously everyone's on their top game or whatever first up. And I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. That is the nature of any social setting. If you meet people for the first time, there will be people like that. And from that, they did so many activities to get us to know each other, the color charts of who's what and personality types. And I think term 1 is very explorative in terms of it's a blank canvas for everyone. Let's get to know each other. And I do think in term 2, in some ways it was easier and in some ways it was harder because sometimes you've got your biases already guarded up. So you might not be as open-minded to personality types if you've heard your friend talk about someone already and give you a heads up. Whereas in term 1, no one knew anyone, so there was no tips or advice you'd get from people. And it was easier because you're more familiar with the course, you're more familiar with being in Warwick, and it wasn't all such a kind of cluster all at once, just chucked at you. And also, I do think people evolved, and that's what I really enjoyed to see. I mean, Madhu, I never spoke to you in term 1. You were a bit busy with other things and whatever.
Oh my god.
Term 2, I feel we weren't even in the same cohort, but we met more, we spoke more, and the same happened with other people too. And that was really nice to see because it wasn't such a linear course where you've made your friends and then you've got your cliques and then that's it. I think the beauty of us only having 105 odd people was we could probably name 90% of the cohort at least.
100%.
Yeah. And yeah, that definitely made it easier.
Last names.
And Madhu was very good in pronouncing Chinese names also, right, Madhu?
Of course,
I mean, you've got to be inclusive.
Yeah, so honestly, Iran Moselle Aziba. That's the first time I've heard that name. It's beautiful. Just by the way, Iran.
I mean, I was I was gonna say, like, we even know people's middle names, some of them and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, whereas, I mean, I met someone the other day on another MBA. I won't mention school and stuff, but UK based, and they were saying to me how they're still meeting people now after graduating 6 months ago. Like meeting people for the first time. Sorry.
Oh Lord, okay.
Yeah.
What about you, Erons? So what was your experience with like your syndicate, term one? You and I think like Himanshu and me, you've been educated in the system back home in your country. This was your first international exposure too. So syndicate groups, working groups, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, I think like similar to what Saahil said, in term one, it's really a blank slate, right? You're coming in and you're learning about everyone that is there. But one of the things that quickly happened, especially in the first week, was you got a sense of how different people in the group like to work, and you naturally just tended towards the one that aligned most with you. Because in that first week, you're thrust into a situation where you're in a group and there's a barrage of team activities, right? And you're starting to see people's personalities and their working ways of working shine through. And I think like you just naturally tend towards what worked for you, and that was kind of what it was in the group. And once we had that sort of understanding, it made things move easier and faster. So instead of spending time being upset that this person might not work in this certain way, you already know how different people are, so you can also manage your expectations and how things will go. And I think that was what happened in term one. By the time you moved to term two, it was a new group and there was a whole new way of learning how this new group operates. And like there was a stark difference between my term one group and like my term two group. Both great groups. Likewise. Great individuals.
You're black Himanshu, didn't it, Saahil?
Yeah. I missed Himanshu big time in term two. Like, I'm not even joking, actually. Like,
I my term one was the best time in the whole MBA, because this person, Mr. Saahil Doshi, I mean, I have to admit that at this particular age, the kind of maturity and the kind of inclusivity which he practices in the real sense of the words is quite amazing, and it's quite exemplary. And that's why, I mean, if you see all our chats, our group chats, I have always been addressing him as the CEO, because I totally find, having spent 2 decades back in India, having worked with very senior leaders and CEOs, what I found was that his ability to manage the strengths and the weaknesses of his team, even though he's relatively much younger to me, is quite exemplary. And I was glad. I mean, he, from the day one, he could make each one of us, and let me tell you, Madhu and Erons, that syndicate in term one was very diverse, and kind of, we had people from Africa, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Saudi Arabia. It was very, very diverse.
We called ourselves the mini UN.
Yeah.
We called ourselves the mini
Yeah, actually. And but the way we all gelled together, and thanks to Saahil, that the first thing he did was like he created a kind of psychological safety for all of us and each one of us.
So I mean, Saahil, clearly this video would be enough to show any sort of future prospective employers that, hey, Himanshu, you've got a video testimonial now.
I was going to say that, I mean, it's very kind of you, Himanshu, and let me know if you'd like to be paid in rupees or pounds. However, I think the big, and I don't want to make this like a preachy podcast or me sound like I'm preaching or anything, but I think one of the biggest takeaways, which I didn't really come in with a plan of doing, but I think it just naturally happened, where I think the biggest thing I would suggest is just having fun. Like, anything you do is not wrong, as long as you're obviously like you're in the right boundaries and whatever, like as long as you're still with the remits of what's required with whatever assignments or group work or getting to know people. But I think the biggest thing is attach fun to everything, and like that's, I do feel, when you'll learn more and you're more creative, and also like what you'll remember. Because I actually thought about this, and again, I won't go on about this because I don't want to preach, but I was thinking before the podcast of like, I thought of like an MBA version of like Maslow's pyramid or whatever you call it, and how like the base is all the lectures and the actual education, like, you know, the hardcore knowledge that you sign up for. Then you've got the internal extracurricular activities, all the clubs that you can think of and wish to join and whatever, and, you know, playing football on campus, all that kind of stuff. And you've got the external extracurricular stuff, like doing things with other MBA unis and networking elsewhere and all that kind of stuff. And then the top of that little thing, the fourth level, I'd say, is like the friendships and the things you make while you're at uni. And I would say, you know, your local network or whatever you want to call it, if you want to be businessy. And what I actually say is, in real life, post MBA, you have to flip that over, because for me at least, what stayed with me the most is the thing at the top, and then the second, third, fourth. Like, the knowledge is great, the knowledge is core and everything, but you don't think about that every day or every half day.
Yeah.
You talk to your friend on WhatsApp that
Unless
you made on the MBA.
Himanshu.
I mean, Himanshu's on his way to PhD, so that's different. However, the point of all of that is, I guess at every level of that 4 levels, if you have fun, you're gonna you're gonna remember it more, and also I think everyone around you will probably enjoy that experience more. So you know, in week 4, we did like a whole paintballing social, right? Like, and that was open to the whole MBA. Break the ice, let's all go and have fun and shoot each other. Like,
it was also an opportunity to shoot people you've been take swipes at
Guys,
for a while.
So Himanshu, I think that's also, so going back to your first question about why these 4 countries are gathering so many international students and all. Saahil is an example of that diversity aspect that we also wish to experience when we choose these locations to study. I love my country, India, but will I get this multicultural experience back home? Not yet. I think India still has maybe a decade or so to go to reach that level of diversity. But that's the beauty of being here in the UK. You can have people of different ethnicities who've been here since generations, and they are British, they are locals, and I think that's truly what we also came to experience in a manner of speaking, to actually get that diversity, to have those 30 different nationalities, not just in our classroom but outside it too. And Sal is a great example of that. So
exactly.
What are your thoughts here?
And just to add to that, so even though technology has helped break like a lot of those barriers that could previously have existed, there are still things that you could potentially miss out on. So for instance, on the MBA, one of the things that we did was eat. We ate a lot, and that was also a bonding opportunity, getting to learn more about people's cultures, getting to learn more about them. Technology hasn't reached the stage yet where it can help us benefit from like those sort of like social gatherings. Of course, you can have like your group calls and group meetings, but 100%. Also getting to learn from people in like unplanned settings and just them being in like their natural environment as well. That's another thing that like you also gain from coming towards physically being present in these countries that Himanshu had highlighted.
Yeah, no, I 100% Erons, like, you can't replace being in person. There's lots of good things about the virtual stuff that business schools and especially Warwick do. However, the in-person experience is still, there's a reason why Warwick still say that's their like premium MBA or whatever.
For sure. I'm glad I got to do the MBA post-pandemic, man.
I know. I mean, you can't replace in-person stuff. Like, you can't replace... Yes. You can't have Himanshu and Abhi Kumar having at each other in a lecture theatre online. Like, that you can't replace. You can't replace playing a bit of cricket in unauthorized locations.
Well, I've seen Himanshu blush for the first time on this podcast. So, Saahil, you've clearly...
It's been a while, but I missed making them feel like that.
No, absolutely. So networking within the classroom, would all of you say was easy for you in terms of your personality types, extrovert versus introvert? I'm especially looking at Himanshu because I know that his experience will be different from the three of us, from Erons, Saahil, and myself. But would you say it was a challenge, or did you enjoy the process of getting to know people?
The first thing which came into my mind when I heard the word networking was inhibition. I was inhibited.
Right.
I was very inhibited because, and I discussed in one of the close conversations with Sahil, that Sahil, I'm not able to make small talks. I cannot ask a person, oh, your dog is lovely, and did you take your dog for a walk? So I can't do that kind of conversation. And both of us, we admitted, candid admittance to each other, that both of us, we cannot do a small talk. But my problem was that reaching out to people, absolutely strangers, when you are put together in a room meant for networking, and starting and initiating a conversation, and eventually, getting, because for me that objective has to be clear. If he or she is not a friend of mine, and that objective always was there, the back of my mind was, will you recommend me if there is, in future, there's an opportune thing? But I felt very shy, and it took me a lot of counseling myself, a lot of gathering courage, and looking at people with the ease they talk, like Madhu, you, Sahil, Thalia, all these people, with the ease they go and talk. Even Erons also, he can sit with anyone, and he has a low pitch, but he can start a conversation and take it to. So, but
did you feel, Himanshu? I was going to say, sorry, Himanshu, over the year, did you feel like that changed in any way, or did you feel that was a feeling you had throughout the year?
Now, with 6 months passing, I started becoming more comfortable, and my level of comfort came from the fact that I started conversations on LinkedIn first, and then with that, I started. Then I could ask people to come on a call, and my the turning point was when I was trying to mobilize guest speakers for the event which we had.
I thought you were going to bring this up. Because,
in that was a real game changer, and from there, that success gave me confidence to move ahead. So that,
I think that's the thing. I asked that because I felt like that was a stimulus for you, because it was almost validation that I can do this.
So similarly for me, with the major issue that I had with networking at the start was I was putting a lot of pressure on myself and thinking, what exactly do I want out of this conversation? Is it job related? Do I want this person to recommend me for a job? But then the conflict is, I can't start my conversation with, hey, I want you to recommend me for a job. You need to actually be interested. In the person, right? So that was putting like a lot of pressure on myself, where I feel like, okay, I need to say something now. I need to do this. I need to do that. But what I realized was, with practice, like, you can actually practice how to network. You can practice how to have better conversations with people. Like there are a lot of resources. There are a lot of resources out there. And I think when it became easier for me was that first event that we had at the Shard, where I just said to myself, you know what, I'm going to first try to have a conversation with 3 people. And like that was like, I'm going to have a conversation with 3 people. And if I talk to a 4th person, that's an extra. The first conversation, was a bit shaky. The second one got better. The third one was great. And like after that, I literally just started talking to everyone, because those fears had sort of been allayed, because I was like, I've had conversations with people. Now I can just go ahead. I can go ahead to speak to anyone, about any topic, and it just progressively got easier.
I think that's 100% like my experience. You wouldn't believe it, but before, like, I was quite shy, and I found networking a little bit not natural. However, it's just practice, experience, doing it again. And
Sahil, when were you shy? When?
There was a time.
On which moment you were shy, Sahil?
If you were shy, I was the shyest person in the room then, my friend. Gosh.
I wasn't even in the room.
I think that's the thing. It's just, I mean, I look back and think, wow, like, whoa. But like, it's just practice and doing it more and more. And I guess just also just being interested. Like, for me now, I look at it as
be interested before you're interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fair.
But on that note, networking, clearly, we've discussed, we've given the viewers a bit of a teaser into what we're going to discuss in episode 5. So, thank you.
Madhu, a public
Sahil.
demand. We need Sahil in the next episode as well.
Well, Sahil, how do you feel about that?
It would
you
be a
like to
pleasure.
join us
It
on
would
a
be a
journey
pleasure.
to discuss networking and the fatigue that we faced with that?
As long as that's what the viewers want, that's what the viewers will get.
All right. So thank you for this fun episode, Sahil. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
Thank you so
us.
much, Sahil. Thank you so much for being there.
And thank you guys for doing this. I mean, it's just a really nice initiative to have. It helps prolong the MBA that we had, which is great. And
Madhu
yeah,
Mita
hopefully...
Menon.
Pardon?
Madhu Mita Menon. It's the brainchild of Madhu Mita Menon.
I'm not surprised, and it's great. No, thank you very much. It's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
And stay
All right.
tuned, everyone. Please, all our viewers, thank you for joining in. Please like, share, and subscribe. And join us for our next episode where we discuss networking fatigue, which is real. Thank you. Bye.
Take care, guys.
See you.
Sahil,
Take care.
outro.
Bye-bye.